They have their own bunker busters, but none of them are powerful enough to pierce 300 feet deep underground. There's only one bomb for the job, and we have it. The MOP. The massive ordnance penetrator weighs 30,000 pounds. It's so heavy that it can only be lifted by an American B-2 bomber. And once it drops, it explodes horizontally and vertically. We've been working on it for 20 years. Trump tested one during his first term, and it's fully operational. We've used variations of bunker busters in the past, in the Iraq War, to destroy deep Iraqi command centers, and then in the Afghanistan War to target al-Qaeda caves. They look like this. Using bunker busters against Iran's nuke sites doesn't come without a risk. The Iranians have stated that if the United States does take offensive action against them, they'll target U.S. bases and the U.S. Navy in the region. If we decimate their nuke site, we'll take away their only leverage, and they could lash out unpredictably. The dirty bombers,
like a dog in a
suicide
corner.
bombers, assassination attempts. Who knows?
They've already done
We'd
that,
have to
right?
deal with the consequences. The United States targeting Iran's nuclear facilities doesn't necessarily lead to regime change. It could domino into regime change, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee it.
And is
The
regime
commander-in-chief has
change
campaigned
a
against
good
regime
thing?
change and expensive quagmires.
At least we know that,
But in the
right?
first
Totally.
term, he wasn't shy about
Yeah.
taking decisive action to eliminate threats when opportunities presented themselves. Striking Soleimani, al-Baghdadi, and bombing ISIS off the map. No one in the administration is considering putting boots on the ground. That's what we think. But bunker busters against Iranian nuke sites would be a bold and dramatic escalation.
That's a big statement.
J.D. Vance says whatever he decides, and having seen this up close and personal, I can assure you that he is only interested in using the American military.
Were in fact, cheating on their responsibilities, and there were clandestine weapons activities taking place. And so, can they ever be
Like 2
trusted
days
to
away
enter
from
good
having
faith
a bomb.
negotiations again? So the president has a very difficult
nuclear
position in
bomb.
front of him right now.
So if
And then we have U.S. bases throughout the region, from Bahrain to Saudi Arabia to the UAE to Qatar, etc. And so their ballistic missile capabilities still remain in terms of large stocks, but the Israelis have been decimating the launchers, which is with a choke point, and that's what is used to launch the ballistic missiles that have been going after Israel. So they don't know what else they have at this point, whether it's sleeper cells, if they decide to turn to transnational terrorism. In the immediate aftermath, they would likely be targeting of U.S. bases in the region, but that would then be attacks on themselves. Then if they become subject to regime change, or at least vulnerable to some sort of action internally, which, as you mentioned, is not something that the president is seeking. The Israelis did strike into Syria, into a chemical weapons facility there about 200 kilometers north of Israel. So there's precedent for it. The distance is much greater. It's about 1,200 miles, 1,200 kilometers, so adding about an additional 1,000 kilometers to it. That's not without risk. Obviously, putting ground personnel in there, God forbid somebody's captured or killed, that certainly puts extra risk and definitely could aggravate the situation further. So it's probably the least ideal of all the options on the table. That's